This is Joe Biden, the President of the United States. While speaking to union workers on Labor Day 2022, Biden mentioned his Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh.
And how about actually having a union guy as a Secretary of Labor? Now, you may have trouble understanding when he starts talking about car bonds and instead of garages and he talks kind of funny, but he knows what he's talking about.
Joe Biden, of all people, is the last person who should be accusing anyone of talking funny.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
Yeah. Now, if you know anything about Joe Biden, you may have heard him quote his father, who supposedly said the following.
My dad would say, everybody, everyone, no matter what your background, is entitled to be treated with dignity, with respect.
However, treating people with dignity and respect doesn't apply when making fun of a man with an accent.
My Department of Labor, led by a guy named Marty Walsh. He talks funny. He's a hell of a guy. And look, and we have a labor secretary that I'm his translator. He's Marty Walsh from Boston. Marty Walsh. No, Lonnie, I only have one problem. Sometimes I can't understand him. Marty Walsh. Marty. He's going to learn how to speak English, but he's real. My Secretary of Labor. I'd understand him if he spoke Gaelic instead of Boston. Where were I, Marty Walsh? If you spoke Gaelic, I'd understand it better than the car bond and all that. He talks about cars and car bonds and all that kind of thing. I wonder what he's talking about sometimes.
You mean like how America wonders what the hell you're talking about, Joe?
We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies.
81 million votes, guys. So Biden keeps repeating the same joke about a guy's accent for a cheap laugh. Very dignified, very respectful. And I got to thinking, would this be okay if Walsh was originally from overseas? Well, let's try it out. Marty Walsh from Uganda. He speaks funny. He's gonna learn how to speak English someday. But it's okay when Joe Biden does it because Marty Walsh is white and from Boston. I kid him all the time, I'm joking. He parks his car in a car bond, but he knows what he's doing. So it's bad enough that the President of the United States makes jokes at a guy's expense in front of hundreds of people, but according to Biden, he kids him about his accent all the time. I'd bet the farm that every time Secretary Walsh walks into the White House, Biden's like, there he is, Marty Walsh from Boston. Good morning, Mr. President. You park your car in a car bond. Now, as you may know, the midterm elections are happening in November, and there's a lot at stake, especially in Pennsylvania, where Democrats are running for both the U.S. Senate and for governor.
But think about doing me a favor. Please, elect the Attorney General of the Senate.
So for clarity, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, is not running for the Senate. He is running for governor. And despite Biden's glaring mistake, Biden supporters just cheered along anyway.
Elect the Attorney General of the Senate.
Morons. And it gets better. Biden also asked the crowd to vote for John Fetterman, who is actually the one running for Senate. And of course, Biden screwed that up too.
Elect that big old boy to be governor.
And again, the sheep just clap along. And I would like to emphasize that Joe Biden, Mr. Dignity and Respect, didn't refer to Fetterman as the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. He called him that big old boy. Classy. And how much do you want to bet that when Biden introduced himself to Fetterman, it went something like this. Hello, hello, hello! Aren't you a big boy? But all kidding aside, how's the weather up there? Now, speaking of John Fetterman, he's refusing to commit to having a debate with his opponent, Dr. Mehmet Oz, before mail-in voting begins in Pennsylvania, and that's weird, because back in February, Fetterman tweeted, "We believe voters deserve no fewer than 3 network televised debates." However, Fetterman declined to make an appearance in what would have been the first debate hosted by KDKA in Pittsburgh on September 6th, and a second debate hosted by WFMZ and the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. Now, as you probably know, Fetterman had a health emergency back in May and suffered a stroke just days before the Democrat Senate primary. And Fetterman cited his health for dropping out of the debates. As I recover from this stroke and improve my auditory processing and speech, I look forward to continuing to meet with the people of Pennsylvania. They'll always know where I stand. But how will they know where you stand, John, if you aren't willing or able to hold the debates that you yourself advocated for? In an exclusive interview with Politico, Fetterman claims, "We're absolutely going to debate Dr. Oz, and that was really always our intent to do that." But at the same time, Fetterman declined to specify which debate he will attend or provide an exact date for it, though he said it will be sometime in the middle to end of October on a major television station in the state. However, agreeing to only one debate is not quite agreeing to no fewer than 3 debates, and Dr. Oz has been pushing for 5 debates and wanted the first one held before September 16th. And even the Washington Post believes that holding the one and only debate in October is wrong because that is long after mail-in voting begins. At a time when Democrats are championing early voting and labeling those who oppose it as advocates of Jim Crow 2.0, that's not good enough. Fetterman and Oz should debate before the start of the election, September 19th, so that voters can have a chance to judge the candidates for themselves before they are allowed to cast a ballot. And according to Politico, Fetterman dismissed that argument as a lame tactic, saying that the GOP opposes vote by mail. Even if the GOP is opposed to vote by mail, what are they supposed to do? Pretend that it doesn't exist? Clearly, Fetterman and his campaign are going to try and use every excuse that they can to delay having to debate Dr. Oz. But at the same time, they're kind of downplaying Mr. Fetterman's condition.
The only lingering issue is every now and then I will have auditory processing and I might miss a word every now and then. It's just that. It's just basic auditory processing. And there's expecting to have a full recovery over the next several months too. It's just the fact that every now and then I'm going to miss a word or mush 2 together. And that continues to get better and better.
Now, as you can see, he's not at 100%. At face value, he seems well enough to answer questions during an interview with a major news network. However, that's not telling the whole story. Politico points out that when they conducted their interview with Fetterman, it was over Google Meet, a video chat app, for about 17 minutes using closed captioning. He sometimes missed words while speaking, but spoke at a normal pace. In other words, Fetterman is having trouble hearing and needs closed captioning to process what everyone is saying. This is why the campaign is stalling, hoping that he's going to get better in a month and a half and won't need to use it during the debate, which itself is an issue. And while everyone wishes Mr. Fetterman the best of health, stroke recovery is notoriously unpredictable, and we don't know how long it's going to take for him to recover, or if he will fully recover at all, and that's just reality. And the editorial board of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette also has similar concerns. If Mr. Fetterman's communication skills have not yet recovered sufficiently to effectively debate his opponent, many voters will have concerns about his ability to represent them effectively in Washington. Voters have a right to know whether their prospective senator can do the job, including handling the give and take of a vigorous debate. And obviously, the big problem is that if Fetterman successfully delays the debate until after millions of people have already voted, and then he goes up on stage and has a terrible time, it'll be too late for anyone to change their vote. This is why voting weeks before an election is stupid. But do what you want, Pennsylvania. So on Labor Day, John Fetterman made an appearance at United Steelworkers Local 227 and spoke for a grand total of 2.5 minutes. And since it was so short, we might as well watch the whole thing and break it down.
Steelworkers! Steelworkers! What an honor it is to be here with you today. Just earlier today, I was so proud to march with you in downtown Pittsburgh. Labor Day, happy Labor Day. You know, how many homes does Dr. Oz have? 9, 10, 11?
How many homes does Dr. Oz have? Because Labor Day or something. Now, as I pointed out in my previous video on the matter, Dr. Oz doesn't own 10 homes. He owns 10 properties, including 3 condos, which he rents out, a cattle ranch, and a student dormitory in Turkey. Dr. Oz has a home in Cliffside Park, New Jersey, and a home in Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania. Now, Fetterman and his campaign, pundits, and members of the media have tried to paint Dr. Oz as a carpetbagger and as someone who doesn't really live in Pennsylvania and has no ties to the area. However, let's take a look at this Philadelphia Inquirer article from 2013, where Dr. Oz helped car crash victims in Bucks County. Oz said that he and his family witnessed the crash at Philmont Avenue and Street Road as they were driving to his wife's parents' house in Philadelphia to spend a weekend. Oz also added that his wife's family is from Huntington Valley, and the couple travels to the area almost every weekend. So not only does he have ties to Pennsylvania, but he travels there almost every weekend and has been doing so for decades. So the term carpetbagger doesn't really quite cut it in Oz's case. And let's not gloss over the fact that Dr. Oz stopped to help car crash victims. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. Now, back in 2013, the same year Dr. Oz was helping folks on the side of the road, John Fetterman heard gunshots in his neighborhood, jumped in his pickup truck, and chased after an innocent unarmed black jogger and held him at gunpoint.
And I heard approximately a dozen or more what clearly sounded like assault rifle gunshots go off.
There wasn't any assault rifle shots, it was bottle rockets behind the library.
Mayor John Fetterman says he rushed his son inside, called 911, and took off in his truck after a masked man in black he saw running. But Chris Mayeras, the man Fetterman confronted, turns out to be an innocent jogger who police say had no weapon.
Whoops!
Looking back at what happened, did you make a mistake that day?
It's not something that an incident that I would ever, want to, repeat, because it was a jarring experience. But at the end of the day, I'm proud of the record that I've accrued as mayor.
That's not an answer.
And
would you do the same thing?
Today? Well, it's impossible to say, given that it was over 9 years ago and circumstances
do you think you did the right
are
thing
different.
That day?
I made a split-second decision in an active shooter situation to make sure that the community was safe and secure, and that's exactly what I did.
But it wasn't an active shooter situation. And the fact that he can't and won't admit that chasing down an unarmed black man because he thought bottle rockets sounded like assault weapon fire, that tells you everything you need to know about his character. Translation? He's a politician, all right. Anyway, because it's Labor Day and he's talking to steelworkers, John Fetterman decides to keep talking about Dr. Oz.
But I guarantee you, he doesn't have a steel mill right across from one of his mansions, but you're going to have one senator that lives across the street from a steel mill.
Wow, what a grand accomplishment.
Because let's tell us something. In the Mon Valley, we make steel. We make steel. In New Jersey, Dr. Oz makes crudité.
Again, Fetterman is painting Dr. Oz as a rich outsider who doesn't really live in Pennsylvania, which is a lie. But I should point out that technically, John Fetterman is a hypocrite because he's more of a carpetbagger than Dr. Oz. Let me explain. John Fetterman moved to Braddock, Pennsylvania in 2004, and the following year, he ran for mayor. Now, Fetterman accuses Dr. Oz of running for office in a place where he doesn't live or where he isn't originally from. However, Fetterman grew up in York, which is over 200 miles away from Braddock. In other words, Fetterman moved to Braddock and almost immediately ran for mayor despite having zero ties to the community. So every time he opens his mouth about Dr. Oz being an outsider, just remember that Fetterman is a giant hypocrite.
I'm going to make it really simple for all of you. It's a choice. An ally, the sacred life of union, the union way of life, the union way of life. Or someone like Dr. Oz that would take it away and try to destroy it.
Says the man who wants to eliminate fossil fuels and therefore eliminate hundreds of thousands of union jobs in the oil and natural gas industry. But sure, Dr. Oz is the villain.
I cannot think of anything more un-American than trying to take away the union way of life.
I didn't realize that Dr. Oz was a union buster. Oh wait, he's not. This article from WHYY points out that his website says nothing specific about organized labor, workers' rights, or the minimum wage. And in my research, I haven't seen or heard anything about Dr. Oz using anti-union rhetoric. But I guess according to John Fetterman, if Dr. Oz doesn't say anything about it, he must be against it. Because silence is violence or whatever.
It's real simple. Send me to Washington, D.C. Any choice in front of me, any bill, union way, the anti-union way, every single time going with the union way of life and be...
In other words, I'm in your pocket, so just tell me how to vote. I'm your puppet.
Please understand the stakes in this race. Send me to Washington, D.C. so I can work with Senator Casey and I can champion the union way of life in D.C.
Damn, this guy's running for senator when he should be running for president.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor. I live 8 minutes away from here, and when I leave tonight, I got 3 miles away, Dr. Oz in his mansion in New Jersey.
Man, Dr. Oz lives inside this guy's head rent-free, huh?
You've got a friend and you have an ally. Send me to Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steelworkers.
So, to recap.
Dr. Oz, homes, mansions. Dr. Oz in Jersey. Dr. Oz in New Jersey. In New Jersey. Dr. Oz, mansion in New Jersey. Crudité.
Very inspiring speech, John. Very inspiring. Anyway, that's it for now. Be sure to hit that like button, check out these videos that you may have missed, and be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. As always, I hope to see you next time. If there is a next time.